Welcome to Raising Scholars, an educational podcast brought to you by the Lake Havasu Unified School District in partnership with Shawn, Lawless, and 32 Bravo Media. This is a podcast designed for families to hear all about the mission and vision of learning which is being carried out at Lake Havasu Unified School District for the academic and social-emotional growth of students in our district. It's also a place to share tips, tools, advice, and reflections on how our schools, families, and community can help our students learn to make the most of their potential in their K-12 learning experiences. We are so excited to be bringing these conversations to you on a variety of topics from educators, parents, administrators, alumni, and even students across our district. Our goal for you is to leave each time with a little bit more knowledge on how to help your students be successful. So let's dive on in together. Christie Olsen is a National Board Certified Educator and support coach for other teachers in our district. She currently serves in Lake Havasu Unified School District as our district professional learning coach, supporting our schools K-12. Christie has been an academic coach in our district for several years and has been in our district for over 30 years, also serving at the elementary level as a teacher in 4th, 5th, and 6th grades. She was integral in guiding our recent curriculum adoption and serves as a resource for our teachers, both novice and experienced, as well as a resource for our parents, helping to organize academic engagement nights for our families across our schools. So we're excited to have her here today to talk about our new curriculum. Christie, I'm so excited that you're here to talk to us. So you're our second interviewee for our Raising Scholars podcast. And Dr. Stone was here for our first podcast. She was able to share the vision of learning for Lake Havasu Unified School District. So I felt it was absolutely appropriate to talk to you more about our curriculum. Our curriculum is really the support system that we're putting as far as resources go into our teachers' hands to support kids. So with your background, I'm just excited for you to be able to share.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
So we're going to dive straight into it. Again, our topic today is core knowledge. That is our elementary, one of our elementary resources that teachers are working with. And I think one of the biggest questions that parents have is how that curriculum is working for kids. So I want them to be able to understand the why behind the sequence. And that's kind of what we want you to share today.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to let you start a little bit with yourself. I want them to get to know you. So tell us a little bit about your background in education and your role in Lake Havasu Unified School District. How did your path lead you to your role as an instructional coach?
I have been serving the students and families of Lake Havasu City for 31 years.
Yeah.
I was an intermediate teacher for 20 years. I taught grades 4, 5, and 6. My husband is also a teacher in the district, and we raised our 2 daughters from K to 12 in this district.
Right.
And we were lucky every single year to have an amazing experience for our kids until the year we weren't lucky.
Oh.
And that was the moment that my path changed from being a classroom teacher to being an instructional coach because I wanted every single student to have a highly effective teacher, a highly impactful learning experience every year. And it shouldn't be dependent on luck.
Right.
It should be guaranteed. It should be guaranteed on a system that cultivates teaching and learning in every classroom, every day.
Right. So getting into your role as an instructional coach, you have obviously a lot of expertise behind you, right? You've got a lot of years of teaching. Now you've been an instructional coach for several years. So thinking about your expertise and your background, what impact does having a strong core curriculum have on the impact on the success of students?
Well, I would say most people realize that reading is really the foundation of all learning. That's where it happens.
Right.
So core knowledge is a knowledge-based curriculum. So let me tell you a little bit about how a knowledge-based curriculum impacts reading.
Okay.
Reading comprehension is pretty complex, and it breaks down into 2 big ideas. First, sounding out words, which is called decoding, and then understanding those words, which is comprehension. Most students learn how to decode in those first few years of school, usually by the end of 2nd grade.
Right.
And that's when comprehension really takes hold. Mm-hmm. That is not easily as mastered. That takes years of knowledge, years of vocabulary development, which takes place both inside school and outside school. But here's how it really impacts comprehension. Researchers took a group of junior high kids and they divided them up into two groups. Kids that were really strong readers and kids that were weaker readers. Right. And then kids that knew a lot about baseball and kids that didn't know a lot about baseball. And then they give them a reading comprehension test about baseball.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the kids that were great readers and knew a lot about baseball, of course, did phenomenally well. And kids that didn't know much about baseball and weren't strong readers didn't do well. But that group in the middle makes you wonder, who did better? The kids with strong reading skills or strong knowledge about baseball? It was the kids that had the background knowledge about baseball that did better on that reading comprehension test than kids who had stronger reading skills. Right. And that just really demonstrates why a knowledge-based curriculum supports all kids.
Absolutely. Because you have to have the background knowledge and not just the skills.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thinking about that, first of all, you are an instructional coach, but you're a national board certified teacher as well. And you already had mentioned that you taught at multiple levels at elementary. So you kind of have that perspective of how the progression happens, right? Mm-hmm. So thinking about that, what do you feel like the strengths are of the curriculum that we're currently using? And I'm referring to the core knowledge that we've adopted recently.
Absolutely. So like I said, core knowledge is a knowledge-based curriculum. And we've talked about how knowledge helps aid in reading comprehension. Right. But even more importantly, that knowledge is key to critical thinking. Right. And that broad knowledge, deep knowledge, is essential. Take, for example, if you were an expert about the American Revolution. Right. You could think critically about the causes of the American Revolution. You could consider taxation, lodging those British soldiers, a growing sense of a need for independence. Like, you could put all of those ideas together and think critically about them. But if I gave you a topic like, say, black holes in outer space, you might not have that background knowledge to think critically about the causes of black holes in outer space. Right. So I think when you think about the implications in education about knowledge-based curriculums, it's clear if we want students to think like scientists or historians, we have to teach them the academic content to think like that. So this knowledge-based curriculum that we've adopted, core knowledge, not only supports reading comprehension, but it supports critical thinking.
And the content builds every year, right?
Every year. Students will never repeat content, but they will build on that content, on that understanding.
Which just builds that background knowledge even further. Yeah. So thinking kind of extending on those topics, the sequence is specifically designed to support progression, as we were just mentioning. So how does that progression support the retention of their skills over time?
That's a great question. So this core knowledge curriculum that we've adopted is very systematically designed to be three things. It is content specific, it's cumulative, and it's coherent. So when I say it's content specific, a lot of state standards will read things such as students will demonstrate knowledge about people, events, ideas that contributed to the development of the United States. Right. But who decides which people, which events, which ideas? Another one would be determine the main idea of a text and explain how it's supported by key details. But which text? Right. Core knowledge is very content specific. It's not just a list of facts and events and dates to be memorized, but really content from grade level to grade level that helps students grow every single year. Second, it's cumulative. Right. Students are able to build on their knowledge from previous years and build on what comes next. And what's beautiful is teachers know what came before and what's going to come next, so they can really help students develop thinking around those topics. And then finally, like I said, it's coherent. Right. It builds within a grade level and across grade levels. Students will never study the same unit twice, but they might study Renaissance in different units and in different grade levels. For example, fifth graders actually study the Renaissance in Europe in the 1500s, but they can also connect that back to, say, ancient Greece and Rome in grades 2 and 3,
Sure.
and the Middle Ages in grade 4,
Right.
so that knowledge is always growing and deepening.
Right. And one of the things that I was able to see even as a principal is, what is your thought process on how that helps teachers be able to connect and have conversations about that progression?
Well, they can connect, and everyone across the district has the same experience.
Yeah.
So that's really beautiful. If a child transfers from one elementary school to another elementary school, they're getting the same guaranteed and viable curriculum, which is really important.
And I think thinking about, I have a student that just went into 7th grade, right? So thinking about that progression to 7th grade also, those teachers at middle school also kind of understand what kind of content knowledge they're coming with, right?
And all of them are coming from 6 different elementary schools, but with this same foundation of knowledge.
Right. So thinking about our next question, so what components of our curriculum do you feel help address the needs of students who might be experiencing gaps, like in specific maybe content areas like reading or writing?
Absolutely. So this might be surprising, but it's actually those history and science components that help fill those gaps. Kids even as young as kindergarten who get literacy curriculum that's really grounded in science and history topics have better reading comprehension than peers who just got that standard approach of learning about main idea or learning about sequencing or making inferences. Students who have knowledge have better reading and thus better writing skills. So I know that sounds kind of strange, but really that knowledge is what builds readers and writers.
Well, you think about the types of books that they read, right? Kids are going to retain more of what they're interested in reading. So the more interesting the content that they're reading, the more that they'll retain.
Right.
Absolutely.
And kids are a lot more interested in, say, ancient Greece and Rome than they are making inferences.
And I've seen that firsthand in those classrooms. They are extremely excited about the content. So that makes me super happy. Yep. So thinking about our parents, right, and the ones that are listening, what do you feel like parents can do to support student learning at home with this curriculum? Would there be any online tools that they can utilize if they want to see the bigger picture of their students' learning?
Absolutely. All of the core knowledge curriculum is free online. You can take a look at the units that your child is studying. You can talk to your child's teacher. What's coming up? What kind of books could we check out from the library? What questions might my student be answering and asking? So all of that is wide open for parents to look at and see.
And one of the things, if I were recalling a conversation that I had recently with Dr. Stone in her first interview, she was mentioning the unit letters that go out to parents. So those include a bit of information about the units, right?
Absolutely. Prior to each unit being taught, you will get a letter from your child's teacher that will explain these are the new topics that we'll be covering. So, and I always encourage parents when your child comes home from school, ask them, what's the most interesting thing you learned today? Tell me something fascinating. Or,
not just what did you learn today, but what is the most interesting?
What's the most interesting thing you learned? Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a really good example of maybe some of the resources they can connect to. Are there any routines that you would feel like might help them be successful?
Read to your children. Read to your children. Even middle school children love to be read to and then engage in conversations about what you're reading.
And even take turns. I know some of the kids that are into like larger novels and things like that, they get fatigued, right? Like it's okay to be able to read to your kids and then have them read to you, and that dialogue, it extends that learning.
And the human brain is naturally wired for listening and speech. So that's a really great way to get that content knowledge. The human brain isn't actually wired to read. And so if you read out loud to your child, you're just giving them so much more content knowledge than they would have had otherwise.
And especially if they're auditory learners, right? Auditory learners really connect to that content that they're hearing. So kind of as our last real content question, how do you think the transition to a knowledge-based curriculum will help broaden our opportunities to fulfill our educational vision and mission for the Lake Havasu Unified School District?
That's a great question. Thank you.
Our
mission is to engage each and every student with a focus on scholarship, character, and humanity. We want every single graduate of Lake Havasu High School to graduate with those academic and social skills necessary to be responsible citizens and contributing members of our society.
Right.
And this knowledge-based curriculum sets them up to be those critical thinkers that are going to be successful.
I 100% agree. And I think a lot of the things that they're being exposed to even younger help their critical thinking skills. They're just sharpened at a much younger level. So I'm excited to see that.
Thank you.
So before we end, we get to the fun stages.
Okay,
so
here we go.
So this is these are typically really fun questions. We call it rapid fire.
Okay.
So this is to get to know you a little bit more. So what was the favorite thing about where you grew up or went to high school?
I went to high school in Wyoming, and so the best thing about going to high school in Wyoming were snow days.
Oh, we don't get those here.
But I will one of my most favorite memories was that I graduated with kids that I went to kindergarten with.
Oh, yeah.
So that's really
Yeah.
a neat thing.
Well, and we now have those kids here, right?
Yep.
Which is amazing. I love that we're in a small community as well. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, I would be able to fly. Absolutely.
I have the same thing. Yeah. I used to dream about it when I was a kid. Did you have those dreams?
I did not, but I love the feeling of like jumping out of airplanes and
Yeah.
falling. And
Yeah.
so flying would help fulfill that need,
Right.
I guess.
So, okay. So this is a fun one.
Okay.
What is a piece of advice that you would give your 10-year-old self?
I would say study hard and know that like life is going to be so amazing.
Yeah. It gets better every day, right? What type of learner are you?
Oh, gosh. It's a great question. I love to read. I love, I guess I would say I'm a reader.
Yeah. Okay, so favorite subject and worst subject.
Okay. My favorite subject in elementary school was English language arts, reading, writing. The subject that I struggled with the most was math.
Yeah.
I really struggled with math, but math turned out to be one of my favorite subjects to teach. I think because I could see the struggles that children were having, and I empathize with those struggles.
Well, and when you teach something, you become stronger at it as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, ELA or math? Well, you just answered that question, right? PE or art?
Oh, gosh. Art.
Okay. What is one place you've always wanted to go?
I have always wanted to go to Rome.
Oh. So is that the only place in Italy that you would go, or would you go on a full tour?
Well, I would probably go on a full tour, but I took Latin in middle school, and so I've always wanted to visit Rome.
Have you been able to retain those skills?
Brush
up, maybe?
I'll tell you, I learned more about sentence structure and parts of speech through Latin than I ever did through English.
Absolutely. Okay. So when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, so many things. A sports photographer.
Oh, wow. That's so great. So do you do photography still?
On and off. Not too...
Not professionally,
yeah,
but
nothing
fun,
like
right?
that.
Okay. Last one. What is your favorite book that you read in school? Do you have a memory of like one book that was like stood out to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim.
Oh, that's a great book.
And I remember it so vividly because my 4th grade teacher read it out loud to our class.
Oh. And those are the ones that stand out. Yeah, absolutely.
Reading out loud.
Yeah.
Yep, it's a keeper.
So our parents that are listening, I'm really excited for them to both take what you've been able to share today and run with it, but also to be able to kind of go out and be able to utilize those tools and resources that you mentioned. The whole purpose of this broadcast is to bring more resources to them as parents so that they can support their kids. So I'm just really appreciative that you're here today to talk to us.
Thanks
for being here.
Pleasure.
We want to take the time to thank you and Shawn Lawless from 32 Bravo Media for helping make our Raising Scholars broadcast a reality. You can tune into this or any new episode at our Lake Havasu Unified School District website, on the communications page, on our LHUSD Facebook page, our YouTube channel, or linked into our quarterly newsletters. Don't forget to tune in to our next episode with John Moss to give parents insight into understanding their students' needs. We can't wait to see you there, because at the end of the day, the most overwhelming key to a child's success is the positive involvement of their parents.